for those of you that don't know, I'm actually kind of a big fan of Downton Abbey. I'm a bit of a tea timer, as they call us.
This is why we do the show. I learned so much about you. I think I know you, then you throw this at me.
So I'm a fan of Downton Abbey. I got into it purely because I wanted to watch the show to watch the movie, and I still haven't gotten around to watching the movie. But
I only watch it just to know how to have chivalry.
Well, and you do have a little bit of it. But for those of you that don't know, Dan Stevens was in the show for the first couple of seasons. He actually was kind of frustrated by the fact that he couldn't get time to start a movie career, and he wanted to kind of shed the persona. So he was unceremoniously taken out of the show in season 3. I won't discuss the details.
Well,
of
he
that,
kind of transferred chivalry a little bit to this.
Yeah, and so I think it's interesting that he has never really turned straight into that Downton Abbey character again. His most popular work has been kind of the anti-Downton, which is that his character has some similarities to it here, but a very different take, I guess we should say. So we're going to talk about a film that kind of leans into some horror, but it's really a thriller from a director that's known for horror and an actor that's known for Downton.
Maybe you shouldn't answer your door to strangers.
That's how he got in. And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFromReviews.com.
Hey, I'm Nick Palodichuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. I almost hiccup there. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Hey, we do have a Patreon. Check that out. Today we're going to talk about a horror... is it a horror movie?
I don't know. I thought it was before I saw it. I talked about this if we were going to...
Maybe John Carpenter got a hold of it.
Yeah.
A horror movie. We're going to talk about a movie. I never heard about it until you mentioned this. It's called The Guest.
Yeah. So when soldier David arrives at the home of the grieving Peterson family, informing them of his friendship with their son who was killed in action, he is welcomed into the home with open arms. David seems to have a positive impact on the entire family at the beginning, but a few odd occurrences and a couple dead bodies leave this family wondering if David is who he says he is.
All right, if they made this movie like 1986, it'd totally be a Charles Bronson movie.
I think that's where a lot of the film comes from, that 70s, 80s. We're going to get the hard
I'm from Vietnam War, and yeah.
So it's a very peculiar film. I mean, I've been a fan of Adam Wingard since he did the first... He actually did a segment in the first VHS movie.
Okay.
So that's where I think I had gotten my first interaction with him. He also did a movie that I think is critically underseen, which is You're Next, which is one of the best home invasion horror films I've ever
Another
seen.
one of those don't answer the door to strangers.
Yeah. And so he's been doing pretty well for himself. He recently did Godzilla vs. Kong, so he's definitely in the main line. But this is a movie that I kind of passed over. I think it's because the title isn't all that popular. Like, in my head, it doesn't ring anything true. But it's one that when it comes up in conversation, people would say to me, "You haven't seen this, you really have to." Okay. And I'm glad I did now.
Oh, all right. So you're really up on it.
I am pretty solid on the film, actually. I like that it's an onion with layers. You spend the first 30 minutes seeing his positive impact. Really, they convince you that you're supposed to like David in the first half hour.
Yeah, he's supposed to be charming.
And then about the next 30 minutes, they convince you that something might be off. And then the final 30 minutes, you realize everything that's wrong. And I think that's a really captivating way for him to be like, hey, you're going to love this guy. No, you're not.
There was a movie, I think it's with Terrence Stamp, I can't remember, from France, and I think it starts with a T, and that's pretty much a stranger injecting himself into a family, and he disrupts it. Toshiaki Monkey did it with Visitor Q, but there was a component of sexual element to it and debauchery with a stranger coming into a family and disrupting all the avenues and then just kind of leaving without really knowing an identity. And I take apart that this kind of lifts a little bit from those concepts of we've seen it before of a stranger and then it interrupts the family structure. The family seems to be functional, seems to be thriving, and then a stranger comes and indulges everybody, and maybe somebody patches up some things and then kind of goes away, and then the family dynamic is completely disassembled. But here he thinks it's almost like David's almost like a force, almost like Michael Myers, not really a real person. He does kind of have that element to him. Yeah. I'm not really up on the movie. I just think I've seen so many that I've recognized, and I think if you humanize David a little bit, I think I'll try to enjoy this rather than just having somebody that's a projected force going in there and just
I think
go all there unscathed almost in any situation.
I think we get humanization through the way that he humanizes the other characters in the film. Primarily Brendan Myers, Luke Peterson. I'm a fan of Brendan Meyer. I'm a Schmodown fan. I'm always Shazam for life. But Luke Peterson being, the kid who's picked on, the kid who's never really... It's a little, maybe you could say cliche, is that he gets picked on just for being him. but the way that he comes in and David teaches him, like, this is how you handle yourself. And it's not exactly the right way to handle yourself, but it's a way that makes Luke more confident, makes him, like, fixes his, like, state in life. And that's why he struggles so much to reconcile, like, who David is and what really is happening to his family. So I feel like we get humanization of the other characters around him to the point where that kind of saves a bit more of his Terminator-esque style.
Yeah, but once I started to recognize what this movie's going to be, that he's just going to be an unstoppable force, and not going to be really unscathed, and he's just going to continue on, almost like Michael Myers. I think there's a reason why you show the jack-o'-lantern in the beginning, because it's almost like a stationary, very frame shot, and then you got it, bum-bum.
Yeah.
Where I would have, maybe I would show the family dynamic really enjoying being around themselves and having, really comfortable and they're happy, and then have an exterior shot at this person coming in, injecting himself almost a little bit.
I don't think that's wrong, though.
No.
Have a breakfast scene before everyone goes to work for the day. Because the movie starts with the dad going to work for the day. He leaves the house, and we're stuck with the mom. And that's the first interaction, is if we had seen the family dynamic at breakfast. As
Something where they enjoy themselves, where you see that, maybe he can see that from the window, like we see with the Riddler, that he's breaking that up a little more.
But even just to show that the change from before he enters the film to after he enters, I can understand that, yeah.
There's some things I really do enjoy. There's some great action in this movie. Yeah. The bar scene, we know is going to happen because he spent a lot of time being in the bar. It's
a good build-up.
Good build-up, right. But we understand that he's almost there to solve problems his point of view way, but I don't think he wants to be the hero. He just wants to show how clever he is and how good he is.
Yeah. There's a part of it that makes me think, because I had a film professor once tell me that there's only two types of stories. You're either the main character enters a strange town, or a stranger enters a town. Where it's like we're trying to figure out who the stranger is or who the town is. But in this film, he's our stranger entering in, and we get this sense of, could he be like an Incredible Hulk TV show character, where he like pops into the town, fixes everyone's lives, and then just moves on to the next town. And I think that mystery kind of goes with it. Yeah. I do wish, this is something interesting, I read that they had felt the need to write into the script, Simon Barrett, the screenwriter, had felt the need to over-explain, I guess, who David is really, and kind of go into the backstory. And they said that many of their test screenings told them to take that stuff out, basically, because they said, like, we know too much about him. I feel like you almost could have added a tiny bit back more, because there are parts where I wanted to know a bit more detail about his relationship to the son, because it does seem like there's an authentic connection between those characters, but we never see them together. We never really hear what's really happening with those two. So I would have liked a little bit more about David. That would have humanized him a little bit more, I think, too, and would allow those connections to, I guess, mean more when they're severed.
Right, and I like I said, there's some things I like about this, but it just sometimes when I'm watching a movie, like, why did you do it this way, and why are we spending so much time with that? Obviously, I've worked in the school system. You're not going to invite a stranger, no matter how much the parents say, to talk about your kid. That's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where you're like, you get that guy out, and then we'll talk about the kid. But you understand that story needs it to inject some, hey, I got to figure it out.
Yeah. I think part of it was that I just really, really liked Dan Stevens' performance in the film. And I bought that that he was a con man who could convince himself into a room with that parent-teacher conference. Even though I knew that he would never get in there, I was like, he's that good at being, no, I'm coming to sit down.
I thought, and I would like to see his performance like that with the Riddler and the Batman. That smarky attitude, like, I figured it out no matter what you did. Because that's in the comic books, that half-ass smarky.
He would have been a good, not quite Jim Carrey, but not quite Paul Dano Riddler.
Right. But I still like the Batman, too. But, he's obviously a very bad person. And I don't know, he's telling me where it hurts.
Yeah.
Or what his authentic self really is. He's just there to come in with a wrecking ball, and then he come out.
And I think we're meant to think that he's going to be our character that we're supposed to connect with. We're meant to believe that when he first shows up.
Yes.
And then I think the idea is that the family has 4 different archetypes, and the dad, the mom, the daughter, and the son, and you're supposed to basically like find the one that you connect with the most. And so again, Brendan Meyer's character, I felt I understood the connection they have. I also really like the idea that they give you this sense that there's going to be a romantic entanglement between him and Anna, played by Maika Monroe. There's that
The daughter?
slowly building time, where like she's like gonna make him the mix CD, and I felt during that scene I was like, oh, okay, so there's gonna be like, even though he's got a dark secret that's gonna come out, like they've got great chemistry, and I'm interested to see where it goes, and they convince you that that's what you want, and then they again pull that rug out under you, and so as much as I knew the film was heading towards a confrontation, I was still like kind of hoping there'd be a bright side, and it doesn't get there.
But when first time I watched this, I could just recognize it's written by a dude, directed by a dude, and it's about a dude, and it's very masculine oriented. I'm not saying that it's misogynistic, but it's like very male dominant, and the female characters don't really get developed very much. He goes in a party and he stops a domestic assault, and the girl gets turned on about it.
Yeah,
that's kind of a little bar. Of course, she takes her top off and everything, and then like the daughter, like her navigating life, like I need your part of my.
See, I felt the mother and the daughter characters I felt were developed not as much as they could be, but enough where I felt that the like element was there, that I could believe them as people.
And then dad's one note, he's 2 drinks away from being an alcoholic that's kind of emasculated. Mm-hmm. He needs somebody else to drive him in. But the first thing he says, hey, you want a drink? Everybody wants a drink. And I think that's just a one note that I think it needs to be far more developed than talking about the Army top secret stuff.
Okay, fair enough. I do think Leland Orser playing Spencer the dad, he's a character actor that I know can do a lot. He can do a lot of heavy lifting, and he is very much like I'm going to drink, I'm going to talk about how I wish I had this promotion. If only he could rent out his apartment. But Leland Orser, I feel like he's not given a lot to do in the film.
No, I wish we did.
And that's maybe why I felt the connection to the children, to the daughter, to the son more, is because I felt like the way that he comes into the film, he is seen as potential older brother, like another element to that, and we're supposed to see that kind of play out. So I didn't see the parental connection with him as much as I did with the children. But I agree with you. Like he stops a domestic assault, and she's like, "I'm going to sleep with you." And I think it's a little odd. And and for a movie that's like so hard with violence, I felt weird with it. Like the nude scene, I just felt like it was very unneeded, out of place.
Yeah, so. It is almost very, I'm going to say it again, it's very much like Charles Branson's, very mechanical. Mm-hmm. Like everybody else is dynamic and very humanized, and then Charles Branson's very much a force and dynamic and mechanical through all things he does, and then I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, you can tell in every Charles Bronson movie that like he as an actor just wants to get to the part where he doesn't have to be a character, and he can just be a thing. So
I would say this is not really... with the way this is going, I would like to see if Sam Peckinpah would have done this movie, because it's very much in the realm of Sam Peckinpah.
It's
just
very
a dude writing about a dude, and it's directed by a dude, and it's starring a dude, and the dude is just a magnetic force, and let's do some action and blow stuff up. And it'd be interesting. Too bad you would really want to see that kind of visionary. Like I said, and Sam Peckinpah was unapologetic, stubborn, misogynistic with his movies and action and blow it up, and women are angels or whores. That's it for him. And he did have his vices on that, didn't he? And I think if you're going to do it that way, go all out. Don't play it safe. Those spectrums, and just say, this is a guy blow it up movie.
That's fair. That's a fair argument.
Just do it. I love Charles Bronson movies. Let's going to reenact it and blow it up stuff. Let's get some action and car chases and break up the family.
So when you go back to the Michael Myers comparison, I do think there's some interesting elements that in the style of the film and how Wingard kind of portrays him as a force, and you can definitely see the inspirations on his shoulder, if you will. When he goes to the Halloween dance at the end of the film, if you didn't notice, there's a direct reference to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in that film, where on the back wall they actually have the 3 masks that are supposed to kill you are hanging out back there.
Maybe that was subliminally and then I recognized it.
And it seems like the score was definitely influenced by like a Carpenter synth score. He got Steve Moore, who worked on the VHS films with him, who also did a really great score for a wonderful action movie called VFW that came out a couple years ago. Steve Moore did the score for that. You can see like he's got a lot of that 80s synth, more hard edge score. And I really felt like that drove the narrative, especially at the end. So you can see like the elements are there, that this is very influenced by a Carpenter, by like an action star, right out of that.
Very much doesn't know his identity. Like Michael Myers is just a force, but he doesn't really care about his backstory. I don't know, he doesn't really care. He's just straight linear focus of just doing that. Yeah, I can see the input. Where I wanted to see a little more of humanized, and make sure the family indulges in. Like, maybe you want to, entice the dad to, like, why don't you help your sister promotion and kill people, to move it up? Why don't you show the kid, hey, let me pulls out a gun with you, and you pull out a gun. Something like
well,
that.
He does show that with Luke, where the scene in the school where he finally, he basically gets his vengeance, and I broke something over his face because he was picking on me too much. I think we get that with Luke. That's why I think Luke is my favorite character in the film, because he's the one who we get the most.
I do.
We get the most kind of dynamic. He's not sure who to be in, even up until the point where he actually says to David, "You killed those guys, right? I know you did, but I know you did it for the right reason." He's actually convinced himself. It's it's like his kidnapper has finally swayed him towards no, he's doing it for the right reasons, and that's why he has so much problems when Anna comes up and says, no, this guy's a bad guy. We need to get out of here. And I like that there's that he's forced into having to decide for himself, and he really doesn't know what to do, and that brings him to his ultimate conclusion.
I would a little wait to reveal David in through the aspects. I think if I originally wrote it down, I think if you approach the house, we always show him from the backside and see everybody's reaction to him until finally maybe he's in the house and we kind of pivot to this person that's a charming person. I think that would be a clever way of showing that this person's just can maneuver. We can observe it that this person can charm his way into a family without in a threatening, and then de-escalate them, almost de-evolve the character.
Okay.
Right.
So you want to see more of the interplay of him convincing them that he's normal.
Right. Yeah.
And perhaps it's going I think that's one of the reasons Dan Stevens was picked for this role, was because he was very well known for Downton Abbey. He was one of the two leads of that show until his exit.
Yeah.
And I think they wanted to go with someone who was going to be seen as a very charming, a very witticism person. And then
if you're a good-looking man like Cary Grant and you want to show everybody off, I think you do like Alfred Hitchcock did in Notorious, where everybody you put him in the back, show his back, then everybody you see, everybody else just see him. They're like, "Oh, you're so hot. Oh, you're so charming."
Yeah.
And then before we even see his face, you're like, "Oh, that's what everybody. Of course, I already recognize you are a charming person."
Yeah, and that's why I think Dan Stevens was cast in the role, and he had actually recently just done A Walk Among the Tombstones with Liam Neeson, where he played an emaciated man.
And Liam Neeson's doing same as Charles Bronson now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But he came out of that film almost emaciated. He was compared to the machinist Christian Bale, kind of that's how thin Dan Stevens was leaving that project. And so they weren't sure he could get built up enough to do this role. And he said Bale did it for Batman Begins. I can do it.
Yeah, he
did.
did.
Yeah, he got his personal trainer and he got back up to speed again. I think there's bits and pieces of the execution of the ending where I felt I wanted to know a bit more about David. I wanted to see what David was actually doing. I think it's a cool scene where he's buying the guns, but I don't really know if that scene does anything for his character, Yeah, because we get Joel David Moore, Ethan Embry both in that scene, so we expect a little bit. We expect something to kind of move the characters. I don't know if that scene really moves the characters because I don't really know what David's goal is at the end of that scene.
Yeah.
When then we bring in Lance Reddick, who is the leader of the KPG, if you will, which is this force of nature, part of the military. And Lance Reddick comes in and he starts giving us elements of backstory that I really wanted to delve into. So that's why I keep going back to I wish they hadn't cut everything out. Wish they'd put a little bit more back in there.
They wanted that John Wick kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, and they even got
we made
Lance
the
Reddick
Boogeyman
from the John Wick movies to come in.
Almost like they were going to say, "We made the Boogeyman." Yeah.
Yep. And it's funny to note that you could call this the Wingard verse because KPG as a company actually appears in VHS and actually appears in Your Next. The dad from Your Next actually is retiring from KPG when he's having his retirement party. So that company is kind of there throughout Wingard's different movies. And so I would have liked to have seen him kind of develop it instead of more of just kind of a joke mention. Give us more of that. What is that world that we're entering into?
Yeah. So I overall, I'm still kind of. I'm not going to kind of recommend it. I do see elements of a really good, interesting movie, and I've seen it many times before of the stranger coming in and breaking up the family, and then going in and just love the ashes that he created.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which here I think they wanted to do that, but they just want to invoke some action. Stuff like that. But
that's fair.
We see a lot of influence of what other things. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So for me, a definite recommendation. I really enjoyed this movie. There's elements I didn't love about it, but I think overall that it flows really nicely. It's got a nice style to it for me. I'm a fan of Wingard. I think everything he's done that I've watched has really worked for me. I haven't seen his Death Note adaptation, so maybe that's the one movie of his that I've been told is terrible. But I've really been a fan of his work and his collaboration with Simon Barrett. I find him a very captivating director, and this is a movie that I wish I had seen a couple years ago when people were talking about it more, but I can see the issues with it that you have at least.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So now we got to find out what you thought about the movie. Go ahead and break this tiebreaker and tell us your thoughts on Adam Wingard's The Guest. Did you love the movie? Did you loathe the movie? Are you somewhere in between? Give us your thoughts down below. And should we cover a different Adam Wingard film in a future episode? He's still making movies. I think he's going to do a King Kong sequel next. So he's definitely still in the mix, rocking out some movies. Should we cover something else of his? Let us know in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, check out those links Nick talked about at the beginning of the episode. Check out our Patreon, and you can sacrifice a cup of coffee every month, so that way you can join the Patreon and help us pick the different films we're going to talk about on future episodes.
Right.
So thank you guys for joining us, and you can find all my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and you can find my podcast anywhere you find podcasts.
Yeah, so lock your doors, put on a movie, and if Dan Stevens is there, I'm going to open the door anyway.